He's one of the hosts of Spain and Fitz on 97.3 ESPN. Jason Fitz will join us here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline as Phillip Rivers retires. We think Drew Brees is going to follow him. And we've been kind of going back and forth. Now, I think they're all going to be Hall of Famers. But what I want to know from Jason Fitz and get his opinion on, bros, is we've been trying to decipher for ourselves. If you had to pick one of those guys in their prime, the class of 04, Manning, Roethlisberger, or Rivers, Jason Fitz, which guy in their prime is the quarterback of your favorite team, the previously known Oakland, previously known L.A., and now Las Vegas Raiders?
Okay, so I got to pick between Manning, Roethlisberger, and Rivers.
Yeah, the three guys in that 04 class.
Yeah. And I've seen enough Rivers in my career, in my life, I should say, as a Raiders fan, to know that I wouldn't have wanted Phillip Rivers. Like, great competitor, put up great numbers. But, I mean, there was just a certain spot where, just like that the Raiders find creative ways to lose games, Phillip Rivers is going to get his and still going to make a stupid mistake that cost him the game, even in his prime. So I don't think that – I think as much as great as he's been, when we talk the great of the great, I'd throw him out of the category. So now I'm stuck with Manning or Roethlisberger. I got to go Big Ben. I mean, because Eli – he had the Super Bowl success, which we all love, but I mean, come on, even Giants fans were split on parts of his career. So I guess I go Big Ben. All three of them are Hall of Famers, so I'm making them sound like they're all awful, and that's not the case at all. When I look back at certain eras of quarterback, I always think of, let's say, Peyton and his greatness. I don't put any of the three of them in the same tier as them, and I think, frankly, Drew Brees in his prime was better than all three of them in their prime too.
So. How about they're all okay? See, I'm a very tough grader for the Hall of Fame, so I have no problem with none of them going in. But I'm assuming all three of those guys will go in, correct?
Yeah, I think you're right. And look, I think if we could all be more like you, it'd be better. For one thing, if I were the czar,
let's record that and play that thing back.
No.
If I was the czar of the Hall of Fame, I would get away with, at first, just eliminate any sort of requirement on how few or how many people can be taken in any one year. If you're a Hall of Famer, you're a Hall of Famer. I don't care if we only get 2 this year and we get 18 next year. Like, at some point, I think it's sort of dumb that we make people wait because we're having this weird selection process. But that being said, I mean, when you think of, if you go to their prime of their careers on any given Sunday, not the Super Bowl, any given Sunday, if you thought about your team going up against Eli, were you shaking in your boots and saying, oh, we're never going to beat this Giants team? They've got Eli. Were you thinking that necessarily against Phillip Rivers? I wasn't. I was more scared of LaDainian Tomlinson as a fan than I was of Phillip Rivers at all. So, that doesn't strike me. But there was a period where I felt like, man, you got to take on the Steelers. They got Big Ben. That's going to be a tough win. I mean, that just sort of permeates my mindset when we look at it. So I would have no problem with none of the three of them making them, but I believe they all will by the end. I think Eli's got a tougher path than a lot of people want to give credit for, because we've become so infatuated in this society with you win a championship or everything else you did was trash and not worth it. And I think, the fact that Eli won the Super Bowls is really great, but that doesn't change some of the stats and some of the lack of dominance in his era.
My choice was Big Ben as well, but I want to get your thoughts on this. What do you think is next for him and the Steelers, considering how they ended the season and the cap hit as well?
Look, this is the least talked about and I think important story, and it even comes into what we're seeing this weekend. We can talk all day long about Green Bay, and Mike Golick Jr. texted me. We're part of a group thread during the game, and he texted in and said, and imagine if the Packers decided to draft a quarterback. And I kept thinking, well, maybe the Packers are smarter than all of us, because the Steelers now have no idea what they're going to do. They didn't figure anything out for their future. They don't have anything to bank on. Tampa Bay's all in on the Bucs, and maybe that works out for them. The Saints don't have a set answer of what's coming next. You can look at particular brands that we're used to of saying, hey, they've got their minds. They know who their quarterback's going to be for a generation. Well, the Packers went out and decided they were going to draft one, and maybe they're actually smarter than all the rest of us, because at some point Aaron Rodgers will hit that wall, and they think they've got their next guy. If I'm looking at Big Ben, I mean, he may want to go play somewhere else, but it's like we've just forgotten, because of the greatness of a couple of guys, we forget that most people aren't Tom Brady. They're going to hit a wall someday later in their life, and when they hit that wall, suddenly overnight, it's like they forgot how to play football. Their body will no longer let them do it. So you're just rolling the dice with it every year. So, I mean, if I'm Big Ben and I want to keep playing, that's fine. But if I'm the Steelers, I'm looking around and saying, God, how did we not figure out something, some way to have a backup plan because they got nothing. And now Steelers fans are going to be reminded that there was an era before Big Ben where they didn't know what was happening at the quarterback position. And it's the most uncomfortable feeling you can have as a football fan.
ESPN radio host Jason Fitz. He's the co-host of Spain and Fitz, 7 to 9 on 97.3 ESPN. Another thing, with Rivers leaving, the options to replace him become kind of interesting, and everybody in Philly is wondering what's going to happen with Wentz. But is the message to you that Philly's not letting Wentz go by letting go of Doug Peterson?
Yes, but I think the one thing to me, and I know I've stirred the pot with this before for you guys, but I still think picking at 6, there is the shot that they're going to look in the draft, and they have the opportunity to look in the draft. So, new regime, new quarterback, but I think they're sticking with Wentz. I think that's what we learned in this process. It would be a perfect scenario for Philly if y'all believe that you don't want Carson Wentz. There isn't a better situation than trading him to the Colts. Gets him out of your conference. You don't have to face him again. He gets reunited with a really talented roster that's not going to ask a ton of him in the beginning. So he's going to be able to win some football games there, and Philadelphia can get a reset at the quarterback position. So I think the reason people are infatuated with the concept is because it's one of the rare opportunities that feels like it could be a win for everybody involved. But that's only a win if Philly can figure out who their next quarterback is. And I don't know that we've seen enough from Jalen Hurts to give any guarantee that it's him. So, if we're in a situation where Justin Fields is sitting there at the 6th overall pick in the draft somehow, is Philly going to think about making the move and totally restarting and resetting the way that they're looking at the future of the organization? I think it's more plausible than people are giving credit for.
It's not definite, of course, but the favorite seems to be Josh McDaniels right now. Do you see that fit at all?
Yeah, I guess everybody loves Josh McDaniels, and he's always in the name for right. It's a common name, but I don't know that we're going to look at it and see any level of oh my God out of it. I'm a little surprised that, like everybody is, that Eric Bieniemy hasn't gotten an opportunity. But at the same time, I also think that what we've seen in Josh McDaniels is a good reminder of this: is that sometimes coaches are particular about where they want to go. So, McDaniels obviously has been waiting for the right opportunity. Is Philly it for him? Well, at some point, if he doesn't break away from New England now, then I don't know that his stock's going to rise, because we saw what that offense looked like in 1 year without Tom Brady. And look, early on in the season, we were giving Josh McDaniels all sorts of credit for finally having the mobile quarterback he needed, and everybody was infatuated with Cam. Didn't work out. So I think the shine's only going to start to dull on Josh McDaniels, so it becomes tough. It becomes tougher for him to get the job he wants. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him jump ship. It's a good hire, I guess. I just don't know that we really have a great indication of who Josh McDaniels would be as the head coach for Philly.
Jason Fitz, Andy Reid, is he underappreciated? Not what is your here in Philly? I think Reid is a polarizing guy. I think he became a more likable guy to the people who didn't like him. But when he was here, people he's a horrible clock management and this and that. Where is Andy Reid for you?
Right now, I think he might be the best coach in the NFL. And I know that Philly's got their history with him, but the other side of it is, and I just will give Josh McDaniels the same benefit of the doubt. Sometimes when you get the next job, you look around and say, okay, what can I do different and how can I mix things up? For whatever reason, Andy Reid has found the heartbeat of this team, these players. He's found the heartbeat of the organization, the fearlessness that it takes. Every single fan can sit there and say that they love the call at the end of the game. But if it's your favorite team and it's 4th and inches, 4th and 1, and you decide you're going to put your quarterback in shotgun, your backup quarterback, have him roll out and then make a throw to seal the game when your defense was absolutely on their heels at that point, that's a level of courage in that call that you rarely see. But that's also a level of trust that the team and the organization and Reid feels like he has. I think he's coaching at this point, as opposed to in Philly, he's coaching with a level of I don't care what anybody thinks or how anyone reacts, and it gives him more freedom to be a bigger risk taker. And we see that constantly with this offense. So right now, we're so infatuated with Patrick Mahomes, rightfully so, but you don't beat the Chiefs just by having a quarterback outplay Patrick Mahomes. You're going to have a coach outcoach Andy Reid, and I think he's underrated for what he's accomplishing now at Kansas City, no matter what the shortcomings were in Philly.
What happens with the Brooklyn Nets now? Watching Kyrie return, can he fit with that crew, or is getting him back more of a hindrance than a help?
I think it's a hindrance, honestly, guys, and part of that comes from just overall, like, we're not in the locker room to know what the culture's like. But at some point, player walks away, player gives coach no respect in the process of doing that, doesn't really answer a lot of questions. Nobody seems to know what's going on. His teammates have to answer questions for him. You look at all of those elements, and now you're looking at it and saying it hasn't really been identified why he walked away. And certainly he doesn't owe me an explanation. But if he's going to say that he's walking away for personal reasons and then video floats of him out at the club with his sister celebrating her birthday, there are going to be questions that they're asked. And so I think the concern I have is not only what's the relationship like with the coaching staff at this point, what's the relationship like with the front office at this point, but even for the other guys on the team, if you're looking at it saying, okay, this was overwhelming and he felt like he had to walk away, how do you know that doesn't happen again in May or June when you're getting ready for a playoff run? So I don't think it's as simple as put him back in there and get everybody to play nice together. So I think Kyrie is, if anything, at this point, it downgrades the team overall in my eyes. The problem is there's no value for him. It's not like they can send him off anywhere because anybody's going to look around and say, yeah, well, we've seen Kyrie do this and we know who he is. So at some point, he's destroyed his own value even on the street if Brooklyn wanted to move on. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's any issue whatsoever. I just wouldn't be surprised to see Brooklyn try and minimize his role, even if it makes him a distraction. Like, he can be a distraction, but he can't be a hindrance on the court because obviously KD and Harden have gelled together quicker than I would have ever expected, and they look like they're absolutely dynamite right now.
How do you view the package that the Brooklyn Nets gave up for Houston? It's hard to not relate what they did in the past with, the Boston Celtics and giving up all of their future assets. Not that this is the same because of where these two players are at in their career, but they did mortgage a lot.
Oh, they mortgaged everything. I mean, and it's funny because we were talking last week about whether or not Philly should take on Harden, and you guys know I have my issues with the concept of making that trade in general. And I think moving him to a Brooklyn team where there is some volatility and personality behind the scenes, to me, seems like you are absolutely playing with fire. They've gone all in, and I think that what this tells you is that the Nets have nothing to lose. They've been irrelevant as a franchise for so long. I mean, what are they giving up? They're giving up the possible future that they might for once be able to be lasting as a relevant team in the NBA? Probably not. Like, this is their window of opportunity to not only win championships, but to try and get people convinced that Brooklyn's a cool place to play and that, you want to go be a part of it and change whatever the mindset is around players that are rising into the NBA. So I think that they went all in just trying to change the perception of who the organization is. And if you're the Nets or the Clippers, you know where you fall in the very city that's supposed to be your city. So sometimes you got to go with all your chips in, even if it doesn't make as much sense, just to try and remain some level of relevant on the NBA spectrum.
Jason Fitz is the co-host of Spain and Fitz, 97.3 ESPN from 7 to 9 p.m. And, of course, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. Jay, always a fun, fast conversation. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you guys. Have a great week.
All right, there he goes. Jason Fitz here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.